Hey, YouTube, you will be glad to hear that I'm back with more minor news and general rambling. Um, the first thing to say is that the Comic Con is nearly upon us, and I will be appearing for my first ever convention panel on the 28th, I believe. Yes, the Saturday. I think it's around midday-ish, on a panel about epic fantasy, which I know very little about. Um, I went to Fantasy Con a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, in Birmingham, which is I think, a British Fantasy Society thing. And I made a very last minute decision to just jet up there on a train. Um, and it was interesting. I saw actually quite a lot of the crowd that I see in Bristol Con. And yeah, the thing that hit me was the people on the panels were very sort of confident and eloquent, and they had an instant opinion on anything that came their way, and they were able to speak with great authority and yes, confidence, as I said before, on these topics. I think I will be more of the rabbit in the headlights type of panelist. Obviously, a lot of the people who go on panels are there because they, generally speaking, want to be, and they many of them have done many of these things before. So I guess that practice makes perfect. Um, but I actually have rather limited number of strongly held views about fantasy and writing in general, and I don't think that makes me a very good panelist. I will tend to equivocate and you know, say there are two views on this or six views on this. And it's much more entertaining if someone actually believes something strongly and pounds the table and makes the point. But I saw a whole bunch of interesting speakers. I saw um, I forget her name. Is it Joanne Harris, the lady who wrote the chocolate books and Chocolat and the Gospel of Loki? She was very good speaker. And I saw Tad Williams, who I would imagine would be like 80, but is in fact in his 60s. Must have started writing really early because I remember reading the Dragonbone Chair when I was essentially a kid. Um, and yes, he was a very good speaker. Anyway, so none of that from me, but I am going to be at this convention. The reason that picture there is it's like the one I had taken when Prince of Thorns came out. It's 12 years old, but it's the essentially only really high resolution photo I have. So they always ask for really big, high resolution in these things. I give them like my latest snapshot, and they say, "Oh no, that's no good." So there it is. Um, Come along and support me. There may possibly be more exciting people at the convention too, but I will be there. Um, what else did I want to chat about? Let's just click through and see what. Oh, yeah, I did this. No, I'm going to bounce into actually SPFBO stuff first. So we now have five finalists for the SPFBO, and by the end of this month, we will have 10. So we're halfway there. We've got Master of the Void by Wen Raven. We've got The Wickwire Watch by Jacqueline Hagan. We've got The Fall Is All There Is by C.M. Kaplan. We have Daughter of the Beast by E.C. Greaves. And we have The Last Ranger by, let's see if I can make that a bit bigger. Let's shift my picture across. Looks like JDL Russell. Anyway, those are all highly recommended by the blogs that chose them from the 30 that they were given. And they are entered on the scoreboard, which we'll fill up in due course with very nice looking scores. And at not Fantasy Con, Bristol Con, which is on the 21st, so essentially 8 days from now, we will be awarding finalist coins to any finalists who turn up, and there will be a panel. And I know I've seen the sort of provisional who's going to be the moderator and who's going to be on it. So that's all going ahead. and I will be there. I'm also going for a meal on the Friday evening before that with I think it's 25 other conference goers who are regulars. They do this, but this is the first time I've had actually night cover for Callan, so the first time I've been able to go out late. Anyway, so that's Fantas. That's the SPFBO all cooking along. What else? I discovered today that I have an Amazon page which has 38,000 followers. I must have known about this in the past and just forgotten about it. But I think if you follow me on Amazon, either of .com or .co.uk, you get like an email when I put a book out and stuff like that. So it's can be helpful to remember. And it says here that these are my most popular titles, which is kind of hard to believe because I find it hard to believe that there are more people buying book 2 at the moment than there are buying book 1. I can agree that Prince of Thorns would be outselling these. Weird to see Unfettered there, but the paperback for that is coming out in a couple of weeks, I think. So maybe Sean Speakman has put it on his mailing lists and it's got a sudden burst. But yeah, that's got good stories in it. I think I've got a yeah, I've got a Jorg story in there, so you should definitely buy it and read it. Right, what else were we doing? Done that. We've done that. Yes, this one. So I did on my blog a test to do with AI writing. There's all this well, we've had all this controversy about AI art, and there's a lot of fear about AI writing. We've had part of the American writers' strikes that went on for 5 months and stopped Stephen Colbert being in my morning YouTube watching. Was concerned with, they had a whole bunch of issues to do with how much they were paid, but they were also worried that AI writing would come and take their jobs. So using ChatGPT 4, which I don't actually sign up for, but someone did it for me, I generated a bunch of short stories. These are like 350 words, I believe. The reason, and I had 4 volunteer writers write me a short story to the same theme. The theme was meeting a dragon. And then I put all 8 on the internet and asked people to read them and to vote on whether they thought they were by a human or by AI, and also to give them a score, like how many stars would you give this? And the reason I went for short, so flash fiction, was that I knew that AI, first of all, people wouldn't read 8 pieces of long fiction, but also AI's weaknesses show up much more the longer the piece is, because they're not yet at a position where they can really hold the stream of thought and create a long story. But the question was, at this instant, where do they stand, and how easy is it to tell that you're reading AI writing? And I mean, this is a thing that is, I guess, important to us in SPFBO as well. That we'd rather not be spending the time of the bloggers reading AI generated writing, and we wouldn't want the AI generated writing to take places in the contest that could be occupied by actual humans. Anyway, it's a complicated subject with lots of different points of view on it. But the question is, right now, can you actually tell the difference? So I'm going to read, I think, 2 of these pieces. One was a piece that was written by AI, which the majority of the voters, we had like 1,000 votes or more on some of these. The majority of the voters thought that this one was written by a person. And then I'll jump down to another one, which was written by a person, and the majority of the voters thought was written by AI. And then I'll show you the results for the whole 8. So let me just quickly read for this. So this one, as I say, was written by ChatGPT, and the majority of people thought that it was written by a person, and I actually scored it quite high as well. In the heart of the bustling city, atop the tallest skyscraper, where the old tales had being buried under the weight of modernity, I met a dragon. It was not the creature from my childhood stories. No broad wings, no scales, no fire-breathing terror. Instead, it was an elegant, sinuous being shimmering like liquid silver, almost transparent, with eyes that held the stories of epochs gone by. I thought dragons were a myth, I whispered, my voice catching in the wind. The dragon tilted its head, considering me with a gaze that seemed to pierce through time. Myths are but forgotten truths, it responded, its voice musical yet melancholic. Just as this city has buried its forests, humans have buried their beliefs. I am the last of my kind here. Why are you here? I asked, captivated. To remind, it sighed, the world balances on the harmony of magic and reality, and now the scales are tipping. I looked down at the sprawling metropolis. From up here I could hear the honking of cars or the murmur of the crowded streets. Just, oh, sorry, I couldn't hear those things. Just a lonely echo of forgotten tales. Can the balance be restored? My voice was barely audible against the vast backdrop of stars. The dragon circled me, its form trailing stardust. Perhaps with belief, with stories, with voices like yours. And as the dawn began to break, the dragon unfurled wings I hadn't seen before, stretching out in a blaze of colour and light. It soared not into the distant past, but towards the looming horizon of tomorrow. I was left standing there, my feet grounded in the now, my mind alight with tales of magic and reality ready to be shared, to be believed. So that's AI writing, and a lot of the lines by themselves are, yeah, good. Um, and it fooled a bunch of people. And as I say, it's easier to fool people in flash fiction because flash fiction can have this sort of poetic vibe to it. It doesn't have to really make sense. It more has to evoke a feeling and a sense. And this kind of makes sense. One of the ways that people said they were able to spot the AI when they did was that AI tends to, this particular one, ChatGPT, it tends to try and summarize the story at the end of a little sort of like feels like a sort of moral homily or whatever, or précis of what's gone before. Um, and I didn't that didn't really happen here, which is maybe why it fooled people. And yeah, there are lines that don't fit together in a straightforward logical sense, like my voice was barely audible against the vast backdrop of stars, because stars aren't generally speaking. Well, I mean, yeah, stars aren't noisy, so it's not a competing noise. And then it's a non sequitur if you're just adding the fact that you couldn't hear it against the fact that there was a lot of stars in the sky. But it has a sort of it could be mistaken as a sort of basically synthesia where in a poetic sense you could be drowned out by the stars even if the stars aren't noisy. So I guess that might be another reason. Anyway, that was the AI that fooled people into believing it was a person. And number five, which is by a person, it's anonymous. The purpose of this was these are all good writers who contributed, like people who had been published, and some of them were quite big followings. But the purpose wasn't to embarrass anyone. It was to just see if people could tell the difference. Um, so let's have a quick read of this one. Uh, Meeting a dragon. Cinereal Grey followed her father along the twilight path between worlds. On her left, rainbow dragons frolicked among the bright colours of day. On her right, quiet ruled the monochromatic land of night. We are creatures of shadow, said Father Grey, not for us the bright lights of day. Bowing her head, she walked the path he set before her. He was wise in the ways and knew well the quiet life of shades, but the bright sounds of her glee drew her attention, and she listened to the shimmering dragons play. They are desperate for your attention, said Father Grey. Turn your head and look away. Do not feed their pathetic need, because you are more than they will ever be. And she plugged her ears and walked the twilight path. On her right, smoke dragons, lost in worlds of their own imagination. On the left, iridescent drakes chased each other in an endless game. We are neither here nor there, said Father Grey. No dragon can hear a word that you say. This time she focused on her father before her, noting the hunched shoulders, the way he looked neither left nor right. She understood. It is you, she said, who is a creature of shadow. You shy away from the bright lights of day. Father Grey stopped walking. It is you, she said, who are desperate for attention but hide away. Father Grey turned to face his daughter. It is you, she said, who decides you are neither here nor there. It is they that won't listen. Sorry, is it they that won't listen, or that you have nothing to say? Father Grey looked away. There are two worlds. In which will you stay? Cinerial looked left and right. Both, she answered. When I need peace and respite, I will dream my stories in the land of night. When I need adventure and play, I will seek out friends in the land of day. Father Grey watched his daughter step up to the left for the first time, and for the first time he saw her true colours. He studied the twilight path ahead and then turned to follow where she now led. So I guess the reason that one made people think that it was an AI story was that it is quite surreal and dreamlike. Um, it's not very focused and grounded, and I think that made people think it was more like an AI story. So anyway, let's just look at the numbers and then we'll leave this behind. There we go. So this is really the graph that we want to look at, or the diagram. On here, going up and down is the average rating. So the lowest rated one got an average of 1.7 out of 5 from thousands of voters, and the highest one got a fairly modest 3.7 out of 5, or nearly 3.7 out of 5. People don't generally like short fiction, which is why short fiction often gets low marks. Ooh, what's going on there? I tried to clean a piece of dirt off the screen, but it's a touch screen, so when I touch it, weird stuff happens. I'm going to see if I can recover the results there. Which I just need to scroll up to the top of this and click there, come back down here, click on that, and not touch any part of the screen. So the ones in green are the 4 invited stories from the professional writers, and the ones in red are the 4 generated by ChatGPT, and there were 2 extra ones, which are sort of special cases that were also by people that I added on at the end. But we'll focus on these 8. So you can see that in general, the ones written by people scored higher, but that the 2nd and 3rd place in this little contest were held by stories that were written by AI. So one of them was one AI story was really hated. The color of the ring around the circle indicates what the majority of the voters thought the story was. So this one that scored top was by a human. It's green, and the green ring shows that people voted that it was by a human. And in order to earn a ring, you had to have a statistically significant vote in favor of one or the other. So when lots of people vote, if the scores are very close together, then you can't say that just because one's higher than the other, you can't say that they chose this one. It has to be a certain amount, and there was some statistics involved in that. So this is the one I read you first, which is by an AI and people thought was by a person. And this is the one I read you second, which was by a person and people thought was an AI. And all of the rest of them they got right. So this one was a person, and they said it was a person. This one was a person, they said it was a person. This one was a person, and they couldn't decide. And with the AIs, this one, and this one were all AIs, and they were all decided by their voters that they were AIs. Though even though people thought this one was an AI, they still scored it more highly than these 3 stories that they thought. One of which they thought was by a person, one they couldn't decide, and one they falsely thought was an AI. So that's an interesting spread. I think with practice, people would be able to determine the difference more accurately. But these were just people who jumped in on the poll from my blog and were drawn there from Twitter. And it's very interesting. The scary thing about AI is that it's not static, that it has reached this level very quickly over the course of a couple of years, and we don't know what the ceiling is. So it might all grind to a halt tomorrow, and these might be for many years the best, writing and the best art that it produces. But it may just keep on soaring up, and we may get a similar improvement in the next 2 years that we had in the last 2 years. In which case, these things genuinely could be writing books and producing art that is, in the opinion of the public, not knowing what it was, as good or better than many human artists. And whether those things are good or bad, again, people have different opinions on, but most people, and me, I guess, fall on the side that we would rather not have our stories and our art produced by AI in general. I mean, there are cases for using aids in certain situations, but the bottom line is yes, I don't want to read AI books, and I don't want to have AI art on book covers or hanging in galleries. So that was that. What else did I want to talk about? If you click on, so let's just go to the book that wouldn't burn. My browser's very slow these days. It keeps freezing. If you click on the series title of any listing in Goodreads, you get to what we were just on, which is that listing of that series. And that listing of the series will often, for many, contain short stories that so you can say book 1 and book 2, but here's book 1.5, which is the way many authors will list the short stories that are associated with their trilogy or their series. So if you do it for any of mine, you'll find maybe there's 2 short stories listed for the Book of the Ancestor, for example. And these will only be, you're only allowed to list them on Goodreads if they are separately available, on Amazon and other places. So here's me drawing your attention to the fact that there's a short story called Overdue that you can go out and buy, and people seem to like it, scoring higher than the book there, and hundreds of them have rated it. And here's the book that broke the world that's coming up, and none of those ratings are from people who've actually read it. Here is the aforementioned story Overdue, which I encourage you to buy because I'm always encouraging you to buy my books, but also because it's self-published, so I make a lot more money per sale on the self-published things, which is why short stories are quite lucrative for me, even though like each one will cost less than a coffee in Starbucks. Far greater percentage of that money comes into my pocket than when you buy a big fat hardback, for example. So I will actually make more money out of each sale individually, of short stories than I will out of any book. But obviously, short stories have a much smaller market. So the majority of my income is from books. And what's this? Oh yeah, this is just reminding you that the book that broke the world is coming out in April, and pre-ordering it is always nice. And the other bit of news is that I have now accepted a book deal for my next trilogy, from Voyager in the UK and from Ace in the US, which are my normal publishers. So in addition to the library trilogy that's going to keep on coming out in 24 and 25, I will also have books coming out in 2026, 2027, and 2028, which seems like a lot. And the trilogy that will be coming up is a more grimdark trilogy, so heading back into sort of darker and more violent territory. And my provisional title for the first book is hag, and the books were going to be hag, mother, maiden, in that sort of sense of mythology where you have the maiden, mother, hag archetype. Um, and the main character is an old um, an old woman. Um, People are always saying, "Oh, you never see old women in fantasy as main or major characters." So I decided to call their bluff and put one in. We'll see if this was disastrous or not when we get there. The publisher doesn't like the word hag as a title. I think it's quite challenging and interesting, especially as the book is not demeaning of old women. It is older women. It is hopefully empowering and showing that well, you will see what it shows. But anyway, hag may not be the title, and I may just reverse that and go maiden, mother, and then by the time we get to the third one, maybe I can push the publishers into thinking that hag is a good title. But we will see what happens. But anyway, it's nice to have um, those book deals in place and to have, I guess, in some sense, a semi-guaranteed source of income for the next 5 years. And that's it. I'm going to leave it to it. I just was aware that I hadn't done a video for a while. Um, like and subscribe. I will catch you later. And now I'm going to fail to find the button that turns us off. Okay.